It's Derek Craven Day.
The best day.
I know. And I feel so excited because like we're about to make a big announcement and it feels appropriate.
It does.
That we make it on Derek Craven Day.
I know. Look at us. It's like we planned it. We didn't, everybody. This is purely
Totally did
just
not.
when everything was ready.
But let's say we did. Let's say we planned
for
it.
sure.
Fated Mates Live is happening.
Yes.
Fated Mates Live 2024.
Yeah, maybe we should do Roman numerals. Yeah, like Fated Mates Live. Like
I.
It's not very sexy. Forget it, everybody.
No.
We're going to wait till we get up to better.
We're workshopping.
When
We're
it's like
workshopping it.
XXX, then we're going to do it.
FML.
Yes, FML 3 to the third power cubed. Any of those things if you're mathy. March 23rd at the William Vale Hotel in Brooklyn.
A Saturday night at one of the fanciest joints in Brooklyn.
I legitimately expected them to be like, I'm not sure you're cool enough. But I love it.
How excited are you?
Okay, listen, everybody. At the very beginning of season 2 of Reacher on the TV show.
We did not know.
I know. Reacher.
We were there first, Jen.
We were there first. Reacher and Nagley went second. And they were in the hotel, and I could tell like what the rooms look like. And, you know, Reacher's like, we're at the Vale Hotel. And I was like, me too. Who did it better? Jen and Sarah.
We definitely did.
The other thing is there was this really funny article, we'll put it in the show notes, about last year's in Brooklyn Magazine. And at the end, they talked to the doorman who were like, it was a little spicy. That's probably not what they would say about Reacher.
We brought a whole vibe to the William Vale, which is extremely fancy. But we think that you all deserve nice things.
Yes.
We believe that romance novels deserves a fancy treatment. So this is what we're doing. Saturday, March 23rd at 7 p.m. Doors open at 6:30. Tickets are available right now at fatedmates.net/live. It'll take you to an Eventbrite where you can see everything you need to see. And we expect these tickets will go quickly.
Yeah.
So grab your friends, make a weekend in New York, or if you're local, plan for a fun night out. There's like a great taco truck around the corner. We discovered
We
last
did discover.
time. There was also a great meetup, apparently, that we were not invited to.
We were invited to it, Sarah. We just were like, we were like, closing out the room and stuff. Everybody, we love you.
I was carrying speakers like from one
There's
side
a lot
of the room
going
to
on.
another.
Here's the great part, everybody, though. Wait,
You can watch Jen and me like lug stuff around. Oh no.
we haven't talked about the bookseller, everyone, is going to be the Ripped Bodice.
Because now they're in Brooklyn too.
Now they're in
Everybody's cool
Brooklyn.
in Brooklyn now.
Yes. So they will be out selling books. We will be inside. There's going to be bars. It's going to be a good time.
We're going to have a bar or two possibly in the room for everyone. So you don't have to miss anything, but you can still, have a fun time and imbibe if that's your thing. And we have our lineup set, but we're not announcing it yet because we're like doing a little planning behind the scenes.
Right. So it's all seamless when we're ready to go.
Everything will be announced very soon. But you can trust us.
Yeah.
We have 3 great authors lined up.
Oh my God, it's going to be so fun. One other thing I'm going to tell you, everybody, is when you go to the Eventbrite, there is also a link. There's a small block of rooms available, but it's a small block. I think there's like 15 rooms, and you have to book through that if you're using it by like February 21st, I think. Like there's a cutoff. So if you are interested in staying at the William Vale, they have a special, so you can check it out. And then if not, it's in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and there's tons of really cool places nearby. So it'll be really fun.
We'll be we said we were going to do this last year, but we're definitely this year going to put together a list of like cool places to go around the city if you're not local. Romance friendly places. We'll tell you exactly where to find the Moonstruck House.
Yes, perfect.
Make it a weekend.
All right, everybody. So without further ado, our Derek Craven Day episode, which is a real banger.
This is kind of a silly full circle moment because I read Devil in Winter by Lisa Kleypas about 2019, and I freaked out. Like I had a genuine
Same.
I was like, I've never read literature before. This is
one of us.
This is baby's first book. Like it was one of those. Oh my gosh! Do you guys ever watch Jimmy Neutron? When he has that like atom moment,
yes,
and it's like ideas are flowing, brain is exploding. I literally go into Spotify and I type in Lisa Kleypas Devil in Winter because I was like, I need to talk to someone about this. First, I'm pretty sure one of the first Derek Craven Day episodes came up. It was like my introduction to the fact that other people in the world were talking about romance. Much less historical romance, much less Craven. It was transformative. I hadn't read Dreaming of You at that point, but I had like truly an unreal out of body experience. So it really felt like I was tripping while listening to the episode because I was like, this is doing so much for me right now. and here I am now.
I love it.
5 years later.
We won't talk about what happened in the ensuing years, but like 5 years later, here we are. We're all okay. We're still talking about Lisa Kleypas.
Exactly.
Never stop.
It really was like the beginning of so much for me mentally. Like, just like new regions of my brain were being discovered is what I'm trying to say.
That's the voice of Sanj, who many of you know as Baskin Sons. Welcome to Fated Mates. We're so excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here.
Happy Derek Craven Day.
To all who celebrate, which is pretty much all of you listening right now. Let me tell like my little part of the story about how we met, which is, I went back and looked, right? It was 2021, deep in the heart of the pandemic when we were all just thinking all the time, all the neurons firing, but where would they go? And you reached out to me via DM, right? And you were like, hey, I've been putting together this really cool thing, which is the Kleypas Hero Continuum. And you were like, I think applying to graduate schools or PhD programs at that time. So you're like, it's a
master's programs.
Yeah, a little impolitic maybe for this to be my public face right now. Do you mind? And I was like, yes, I would love to be the face of this right now. So I was just like, a listener, right, a follower, like asked me to share this. I hope I tried really hard to like make it clear it was not mine. And it garnered so many fun conversations. And that, I think, was when, you have those moments where you're just like, oh, romance is unmatched. The best.
The best.
Yeah.
Well, I came upon you, Sanj, through, I think somebody sent me some of your TikToks. Yeah. Because I feel like you're legendary. Like now it's like romance TikTok. Gosh. It's like you're one of the grandmothers.
The luminaries.
My gosh.
What we say, the doyens of TikTok, of romance TikTok.
People can't see me, but I am blushing. You can't tell because my face doesn't do that, but I am.
I believe it was my editor at the time. She was like, this person, like we're sharing this was shared around the office today. And I don't even remember what it was about, but she was like, she's smart. You should know her. And I was like, she is smart. I should know her. And then
gosh.
You're in New York. And so we have sort of passed like ships at events. But it's really nice to have some time to talk to you.
I'm so thrilled. It's so funny because like I feel so fraudulent sometimes in these spaces because like I haven't taken an English class since I was 18, and so now it's been like so long. But I think sometimes people are like, you have like a literary perspective, and I'm like, no, I'm actually a psychologist in training, like different discipline. Like I'm making it up as I go.
It's really about feelings.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, at this point, like my interests are converging to the point that I like can't pretend that they aren't just like one big academic soup, but it is really lovely. I feel like I'm in a really lovely corner of the internet. I feel very like lucky in that way where like there's this like lovely reciprocity of like people being nice to me and me feeling nice to them and like, making friends. I have this like, I guess like optimistic little bubble of romance community online that I'm really like protective of, I guess.
So can we talk a little bit about this is the question we ask everybody when they come on the podcast, but can we talk about how you came to romance? Have you always been a romance reader? Did you find it because of school? Like, what's the deal?
So 2019, I was finishing up my undergrad and I was like done with all of my real credits. I was taking a bunch of sort of unserious classes to finish out credits. And I was like, I haven't really picked up a book in a really long time. So I tried to do like a 52 books in 52 weeks challenge to like restore my love of reading. And I like read the 52 books in 52 weeks. Secretly, on the flip side, I was also reading hundreds of romance novels.
Yes.
Like I'd started with Jen DeLuca's Well Met because it came in a book of the month box. books. And then I also read somehow, I actually don't even have a recollection of how this happened, The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie. And I was like, historical romance is real. It rocked me. It rocked me. Of course.
That
like
book
I
is
was just like,
terrific.
speaking of neural pathways being developed, it was immediate. So that summer before I started my job after I graduated, I read enough to like fully enter a new plane of existence for myself where like I didn't count what I was reading. I like couldn't tell you the specific names of most of the books. I worked my way through, I think, all of Elizabeth Hoyt's backlist, all of Jennifer Ashley's, just so many authors, all of the Kleypas backlist. Like,
Yeah.
I went through all of them in one go. But I was still at a very like sort of insular space where I was like, nobody else in the whole world has read these books, obviously.
No, right.
I'm the first and only romance reader at this
Yeah.
point, because it was like sort of pre my internet involvement, I think.
That feels really purposeful to me. Like it was isolating when I was young, right? Because it was shameful and you had to hide it. And so I think a lot of us, even if we didn't have the internet, had that experience of feeling like no one else ever reads these. And if you came across someone who did, it was like kind of like a testing. Like, do you really mean it? Or do you mean that every once in a while you've read a book by Danielle Steele?
Yes. Even now, sometimes when I say this, they're like, so The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks? And I'm like, don't say that name to me ever again.
Go away from
like,
me. You were finding so many great authors, one after another. And I mean, when you go deep into the Kleypas backlist or the Elizabeth Hoyt backlist or whoever you were reading, one right after another, you don't have time to make friends on the internet. You were too busy reading books, falling for these
I had no time.
dudes.
Yeah, I was very busy being a menace to all of my like in real life friends, telling them that I'd unlocked the secrets of the universe and they just had to come join me.
Right.
Sort of.
Yeah. And that key is held by Lisa Kleypas.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened for me.
I mean, but what a good first historical, The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie. Also a real like 300 level book. Like you jumped right in.
Yeah, that's true.
It really got me.
Yeah.
It really got me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really amazing.
So you started Kleypas with Devil in Winter.
No, I started Kleypas with Mine Till Midnight, Cam and
all right.
Amelia's book.
So really bouncing around.
Yeah, and St. Vincent and Westcliff are in that book. Mm-hmm. And I was like, the new lore just dropped and I'm not familiar with it. So then I went back and I like caught up. I was like, references are being made and I'm not familiar at all. Like, whose house is this? Why am I so intrigued by Lillian? And, then I realized they had their own books. So I started with Mine Till Midnight, actually worked my way through, I think, all of the Hathaways, and then went back and read the quartet, and then came to the Ravenels after. Or Ravenels?
In the audio, it's Ravenels, so that's what I always say. Mary Jane Wells, would she get it wrong? I don't think so. I was thinking about this because I don't know if we've ever talked about this before. I am pretty sure that my first Kleypas books were the contemporaries.
Oh,
really?
Wow.
Isn't that interesting? Because I was looking back through so we have a Discord, and one of the questions this week, which like we have a question, someone was like, we should have a daily question just to like spark conversation. It's been really fun. And I suggested this one question, which everybody, if you're listening at home and want to do this, please let me know because I'm fascinated by it. It's like, go back to wherever you're buying books online. For a lot of us, it's Amazon. And, if it's not, that's fine. Although I think Amazon has the best record keeping. And it was like, go back and figure out what the first romance you ever bought in paper, the first romance you ever bought in and the first romance you ever bought in audio. And like kind of and do you remember like when like, right? And it was, I've had Amazon for 20 plus years. And so I was like all the way back to like the late 90s. And the first, it was a Susan Elizabeth Phillips for me. And in the same, like, it was 3 books. It was a Susan Elizabeth Phillips, this is in paper because it was like 1999, a Lorraine Heath, and a pre-Bridgerton Julia Quinn. And the thing I was saying is, if you had asked me yesterday or before I looked, I would have told you I'd never read Lorraine Heath before we did for the podcast. Like, I do not remember like her being one of my people. I was like, there she is in my fucking Amazon account. Right. And then in God, I can't remember what it was. It wasn't quite as memorable. Right. But it was really interesting to think like, but when I was looking back, I was like, my first Kleypas books, unless I bought a historical somewhere along the way and read it and don't remember it were the like blue-eyed girl, like whatever those were, like those sweet sugar daddy or whatever they were called, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
The like
I
Texas ballroom thing.
yeah. And then I think I was like, oh, this lady writes historicals too. As opposed to,
Wow.
here's a weird little thing
Mind-blowing.
she's doing, right?
Well, I just, while you were talking, looked up mine for that. So my first purchase on Amazon was Galen Foley's His Wicked Kiss, which is one I don't even remember that book, but I must have, like, I remember reading Galen Foley. Galen Foley is another breastfeeding hero kink person for those of you out there keeping score. And then the next order that I placed, so that was February 4th, 2007, and that unlocked me evidently, because then literal next order was February 7th, 2007, and it was Secrets of a Summer Night. But I had already read.
You'd already read, yeah.
I mean, I was for sure reading Kleypas from the bookstore.
Yeah.
At that point. I mean, I can remember literally where I was when I read Devil in Winter. And I was like, oh my God. Like, we talk about Derek Craven, and I do love Derek Craven the most of all of them. But like, Sebastian in that book is like a perfect hero. The transformation in that book.
Oh, yeah.
I think I had the same thing where like my brain was just firing on.
Yeah. The summer of 2009, I ordered Elisa's Kleypas book every month. Smooth Talking Stranger in June, Suddenly You in July, and Dreaming of You.
You were mixing it up.
Yes. So I think I did. I think I like was like, oh, wait, she's up. And then just like went right into it.
I mean, I honestly think you can kind of pick it up wherever. Like, there is that sort of recommended order of starting with a quartet, but it's no matter how you get there, you get there.
Well, yeah, and you can't. It is like the Kleypas universe too, because you could start with yes, everybody says you have to start with the Wallflowers, but I mean, Craven is in. Even you go back and like Derek Craven came before the Wallflowers and like starts that story arguably, and then there's like Lily before him, and
I've always been kind of fascinated. Maybe this is the researcher in me, and like the idea of a reader ethnography. Like, if you took like a cohort of like 10 romance readers and attempted to genuinely like plot their reading over like an extended period of time. First of all, that would be just an insane number of data points. Like, whoever takes that upon themselves. But I just think it's such a fascinating, because we're like developing our taste iteratively as we read. Like, the unlocking of all these new sensibilities like shapes all of our future sensibilities. And then like, I don't know, every time I return also, because so many of us are like cyclical rereaders, we like develop new ideas. Like, for me, even coming back to Dreaming of You now, in this reread, I was like, this is a Marxist allegory. Like, I came out of this reread of Dreaming of You and I was like, no, this is 100% a Marxist allegory, which is definitely not what I was thinking the first time I read it.
And probably not what Lisa Kleypas was thinking when she wrote it, but yes.
Who's to say? Didn't she do a political science degree?
Yeah, maybe.
I think that's the part I actually find really fascinating. And like, we have talked about this a lot. I am fascinated by like the things that didn't hit for me the first time I read them, but I reread them. Or like I read it however long ago, and then it like is dormant in my brain and it bubbles up and I go back to reread it. It's like this fascinating, like, what is going on in there? I mean, people have heard me say like, we should do a best of like 2017 now. Like, right? Because you don't know what your best or your favorites were often for years. And I mean, because I'm a big rereader. Like, I think there are people out there who never reread, but I am constantly in rereading. And I'm often thinking, like, what is it that I'm getting out of this rereading this particular scene or this whole book right now? Like, what is it I am needing that I know this exact thing is going to deliver to me? I am not a psychologist, so I could not tell myself. You might be able to tell me.
Working on it.
Sanj, do you have a favorite Kleypas?
Yeah, mine is Devil in Winter, regrettably. Like
Really?
it is
I thought it was going to be Winterborn because I've seen the footnotes on the chart.
like I'm heart eyes for Winterborn. I think he's like kind of a perfect man. And like though honestly, my favorite is Cousin West. Like Cousin West is like if I had to
Cousin
if I had to
West.
partner with a Kleypas hero, like Cousin West is my guy. There's something about the reformed rake turned farmer, like something about the agriculture is just like really getting me about that book. And he's just like so tender. And this thing that at MKick on TikTok and Twitter and stuff is always saying is that like she feels like she likes Cousin West more than Kleypas likes Cousin West, and I feel the same because she didn't write them an epilogue, and it like breaks my heart every time. But I feel great fondness for both of them. But my favorite of the books, the one that I like basically reread like a religious text, is Devil in Winter. And I do have like new and frustrating questions with that text every time I come back to it. So like in terms of the thing that like has gripped me for now 5 years, it's that one.
I have a question. Do you start at Devil in Winter or do you ever go back and read Autumn?
I go back and reread all of them relatively frequently.
When you think about St. Vincent, do you think about Autumn St. Vincent?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I do. The sort of enduring reason why I'm fascinated by that book, well, there are many reasons, but one of them is that like I think it's where Kleypas like puts forth her theories on masculinity.
Mhm.
Like the idea of like what masculinity is, how it can be deconstructed and how it can be reshaped from like the ground up, right? So like we know toxic, complete dick in It Happened One Autumn. He has that terrible scene where he's
Kidnapper.
like the kidnapping, but also that scene where he's like, oh, my ex-lover threatened to kill herself in front of me, and that was really annoying, so I left. Like he's doing any number of horrific things. Like
Terrible.
he's just on this like terrible path. And I think for people, this is varying levels of persuasive, but like the reason why I find his like theoretical reform so persuasive is because she takes so much care to humiliate him for the entire first 3/4 of that book. She's like merciless. He's financially destitute and reliant on this woman. He is hungry and cold. He's sick. He gets shot. He is like learning how to run like he's genuinely like scrapped in terms of dignity, repute, has no friends, like he's completely and fully like he has to be like completely beat up.
Yeah, to be remade.
For this like it's like a creation myth in some sense. Like this idea of like what raw matter of masculinity is there and how can we reshape it into someone who like can be a hero is the thing that I find like that's the thesis, right? And like she plays with this thesis with Craven too. Like it's the same thing of like this person who is this like pinnacle of obsessive masculinity in this like even more like raw, unfettered, like toxic way. In what way do we make that recreation like genuinely persuasive? Like in some sense, Sebastian is like an evolution of that same arc.
Yeah.
Like, and it's a 2-book arc in both cases. Like Derek is also, starting that.
Can I tell you, and this is something that I was surprised when I reread Devil in Winter, like, again, like kind of for the first time in the way of like, for like the podcast or like thinking about it in that way. The thing that to me makes Devil in Winter a really hard read is Cam. And part of it is because, like, back to your whole, like, masculinity theory, it, like, really bothers me that he is, like, constantly referred to as a boy. And, like, he's older than Evie. You know what I mean? And yet, the way that he is sort of, like, infantilized and, like, referred to as a child, and it doesn't bother him at all, right? Which I respect and I think is probably the only reason it has not, like, completely destroyed Devil in Winter for me, but it's like one of those things like I skip all those scenes and I have only read Cam's. I don't think have I read Cam's book? I've never done it because I'm just like, I don't know. It just is like not for me, maybe. Yeah.
Well, Cam's really interesting too because there is the tee up for Cam and Daisy in Devil in Winter that then doesn't materialize in Scandal in Spring.
Yes. I was kind of under the impression that was like a publishing rights thing.
As I understand it, I think she tried to write it and she didn't. She scrapped it. It was
interesting.
that's from Lisa's own mouth. She tried to write it and she
okay.
scrapped it. And I don't think it's secret. I wouldn't have said it if I thought like it was a.
I also don't disagree with you though.
I think it didn't work. She didn't think it worked. And I guess, maybe the timeline was so tight on both of them that, she couldn't make the change. But Cam is a curious character. But also I think because of the Daisy piece, I don't know, Cam, I don't have the same problem that you have, Jen, because I think for me, Daisy and Cam having their like little like love story in that book feels like he's getting a gift.
I think the other thing that's interesting to me about Cam is like one of the things like that's very frowned upon now, right? Is like any sort of deviation from the point of view of like whatever character we're in for that scene. And I think like one of the greatest deviations in romance is the one where Cam observes like the way that Sebastian is so wildly in love with Evie and doesn't know it. And it's
like a tuning fork.
That's right. Right. It is such a memorable, and anytime someone says like, oh my God, that's terrible and awful and you should never do it, I think of that moment. Like, what do you mean? The only way for us to get that information, those two are so in their own heads. The only way for us to be privy to that information is through an outside pair of eyes.
Well,
and
it's a real homage to Lord of Scoundrels there too.
Yeah.
Because that's all Loretta. That's how Loretta paints Dane in Lord of Scoundrels with a third party.
Yeah. Like they're the ones who can tell. And I think in that sense, I don't know, I just find it interesting the way that they're like rules she so effortlessly breaks.
Yeah. I mean, her use of POV in general is something that I feel like I'm paying more attention to with every reread. Like this in particular, I think Dreaming of You is a particularly good example where like mid-scene, you're watching this like POV flip, but like if I wasn't rereading this or coming back to it, I wouldn't have noticed.
Right.
It's so effortless. It's so seamless. But I will also say to your point about like the sort of infantilization of Cam, I think that's a really good point, and one that like in general, I think this is what I struggle with the portrayal of Romani, and actually Romani, but also her like Irish and Scottish characters, where like there is a fetishistic lens. Like there just is. I think every time I talk about Kleypas and when I talk about the Hathaway series too, I always have a caveat for the first two books where like there's this sort of orientalistic, like sort of exotification sort of thing happening. And I think that's unfortunately just one of the things that you have to like hold as like a complicated part of the text, for me at least.
Yeah.
I will also say that interestingly, even as like Cam is kind of referred to as a boy and infantilized in the text, there are some really weird moments where St. Vincent does that to Evie too, where he calls her a girl.
A girl,
like,
right?
You know,
child at some
like,
point he refers to as child, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's like some parody there that I think kind of helps
softens it
like,
a little
manage
bit,
the scales. But it's not like an uncomplicated choice, I think.
Well, and look, it's also a book of its, I mean, you know, I think
its time,
it's of its time, right? Like there are lots of ways in which, you know, I assume like she wouldn't make these choices anymore. And I think that I am really comfortable like holding all of, like you said, holding all of that to be. Like I don't expect if I expect like the books I love to sort of be perfect, right? In the way that I think they are now, like I've lost my entire reading history. And so, you know, I think it's interesting to talk about them, but I mean, like I've still reread Devil and Winter a million times, right? I mean, certainly we've talked a lot about, you know, this does not ruin any of these books for me. I just think it's interesting to think about. And again, like you said, as you read and reread, the ones that I don't know, like I come around to like, this doesn't bother me this time. And now I'm interested in this thing that, you know, I didn't pay attention to before. They're so, like her books just are so magnanimous that way, right? There's always something new if you're willing to read for them.
Yeah. Oh gosh. It really is like such a generative rereading experience, I think. Like, I think that's why it's so cool that this like Derek Craven Day has been happening for years, because like, it's like it's actually fruitful. Like it's one of those things that's actually fruitful. You know what I mean? Like it's like fun, but it's also like
like what are we doing with it this year?
Yeah.
Like,
and I mean it gives us the opportunity to really dig into what, like we're doing right now, other parts of Kleypas and what she does so well. And I mean, I think I want to get into your chart because there is a real textbook Kleypas hero, right? And they are all, it's like when you're listening to a really great musician and you're like, nobody plays the guitar like them, right? Like I'm a really big Ani DeFranco fan and nobody plays you can hear Ani DeFranco playing the guitar like no one else. I've never heard anybody else play that way. And I feel like with Kleypas, there is a Kleypas hero who just no one writes like that. And he just can't be replicated. And also you open a book and if you're a real fan like we are, there's a comfort to it. You just sort of slide into that sort of delicious pool of hero. But also, I think some of Lisa's finest work is in these heroines who at first glance feel like wispy air, right? Like Evie is a great example of just like, she's barely there. And then suddenly she's everywhere. My favorite, as I've aged, I think, like as I've come back to the books again and again and again, I have become more and more and again the Magic fan.
Oh, I think it's so good.
So, like, I think this is both, as it's getting older and sort of thinking about love in a more complex and, layered way. But I think but I think it's also about the writing in it. The writer in me, I'm always amazed by how little happens in that book and how much happens in that book. Like the internal nature of that book is so magnificent. And I think, we've talked on the podcast, I can name like maybe 5 books where I feel like there is so much internal churn that it doesn't matter. You don't need anything else in the background. And so for me, but the heroine of Again the Magic is another one who like feels like she's not even there. And she's like a breath in a room that's just all hero. And then suddenly she's everything. And I think that's what Lisa really does for me is she does that fine work of building a heroine who just eventually just like consumes you. And I think it's so delicate and it's barely there. And then suddenly the book just opens up at the end and you think that heroine is unforgettable. And I think Sarah is that from the jump for me.
Yeah.
She's one of, I think, Lisa's rare heroines who I think Lillian is like that. Like she has a handful of heroines who are larger than life from the jump.
Well, it's that really interesting passage in Dreaming of You where she sort of notices that the thing that she and Derek have in common is that they're both observers of life. That like she sort of positions herself as this like passive, wallflowery individual, like someone who is made for friendship, not for passion and romance. And yet, like she has this streak of pride, and she shoots someone in like
right
the first
away.
5 pages.
Yeah,
sure. So like I guess one of the things that I've been like sort of enduringly fascinated by with Kleypas's work at large, but like I think Again the Magic and Dreaming of You and honestly Devil in Winter are really good examples of this, is like the ways in which we are inclined to believe our own mythology about ourselves. Like the ways that like we sculpt all of the and I think it tends to be more obvious with the heroes where they're like, I'm destined never to be loved. I'm a manly man.
I smell of man.
And until they're like resoundingly like humiliated in front of a crowd, they really just stop. That's the only time that they're ever threatening that. But like there's something more complicated with a lot of the heroines who are rarely dealing with like similarly cataclysmic bodily circumstances where like they are also having to challenge their own ideas of like who they are, what they're capable of, and like the myths that they tell themselves about their lives that have become reinforced. Like this sort of self-perpetuating narrative that it has to collapse. Like it has to collapse at some point. And for I think Aileen, right? Aileen,
yes.
for her, it's like this idea of the like perfect, impervious to all influence beauty who like is like a touch removed from society and is this like honorable figure who just like moves through the world without offense. And for Sarah, it's this idea that she's like this, you know, observer who will never be an active participant in the world. And for Evie, it's this like, I was never like, I always knew I was undesirable. I always knew that no one ever wanted me for anything. And it's not until Sebastian literally says like, you should probably let me like give you kids or something.
Yeah, right.
Now the world is your oyster. Like,
Right.
and she's sort of like, oh, I guess it is. Like, you know, it takes this like very subtle shift in viewpoint where you like go from thinking essential things about yourself to like regarding the world with more plasticity that I think is a really subtle but like remarkable thing. It's a really cool thing. That's the thing that people spend their whole lives trying to do.
Yeah.
Like unmaking themselves and like allowing themselves to be remade, you know?
Well, I mean, and I think this is where like the fact that they're romances is so important, right? Because I think like one of the things that I don't know, it's just like really beautiful to me is the idea that like the person you're in a relationship is going to make you better in some way, right? And I think that what's really fascinating is when you get to like Sarah, who really has no expectation for that, right? Like she's going to go back to, you know, Grover's Corners. That's not the name of it. Something Greenwood Corners. And marry Percy or Perry or whatever his name is. Like that's how much I dislike him. But like she's really determined to like make her way in the world without love. And then when she sees like, you know, like we're both observers or whatever, like there's this way in which I have some sort of like connection to this man. Like there's something about this. I just think it's like really fascinating to see. Like, I mean, to me, she's also in like the Garrett Gibson camp of like, I have determined that my life is going to be a certain way because because this is what I must do. And I know that like no man or society will really support me in this. So I have no choice but to go it alone. Right. And so it's interesting to think about like kind of the way that, you know, like you have your Kleypas heroes categorized, but I think there's ways that the heroines are also categorized, or like I think of them as being in groups.
Well, I think that with both Sarah and Garrett, there is a moment where, with Sarah especially, Sarah doesn't, in many of to Sanj's point, many of Lisa's heroines sort of are dealing with kind of a sense of what I have is all I will ever have, right? What I am is what I am. And there's a sense of like, I wish it could be different, but it's not, right?
But it's not, right?
Sarah doesn't have that. She's perfectly happy being, you know, Sarah. And I think even, you know, Greenwood Corners with, you know, Percy Perry I mean, obviously she's not like over the moon that she's going to have to end up with Percy Perry, but like, she's not, there's nothing, I think Sarah's perfectly happy. And that's what makes the moment where she realizes like the world cracks open and she's like surprised by the way it could be. And so there's a temptation for Sarah that is really compelling. Because Derek traffics in temptation.
Yeah. She's given the opportunity to like want for once. Yeah.
And like,
instead
like
of just,
really like viscerally want. Like, like it's earthy the way that she wants in a different way than like, you know, Aileen wants, but it's, you know, she's a Pisces. She's like up in the clouds.
Yeah, Aileen just like wants to float through a castle, like untouched by all. Yeah, like she wants to be like a marble statue come to life, and you know.
No, Sarah wants to like take off her clothes and like roll in the mud, and it's great because Derek's like, "I got you. Let me make you mud."
Happy to do it.
Oh, Derek Craven would. He would make you a mud pit.
He would. He would.
Yes.
He would.
He wouldn't have anything to do with Burning Man, but he would make you a mud pit.
If that's what you wanted,
Absolutely.
He'd do whatever you wanted. All right, let's look. I'm pulling up your chart. So obviously this is audio, so we will put the chart in show notes and we will also put it in it'll be the chapter image here, but it's going to be difficult to read. So you'll come and look at it on show notes, but maybe Sanj could walk us through the
Happy to
Kleypas
do it.
hero continuum.
Yeah. Oh, and also like I don't know if I got the story about like where did this come from? Is this just like a pandemic fever dream?
Yeah, how did this come to be?
This is okay. So this actually really is the silliest thing in the whole world. So my best friend, my long-suffering best friend, the person who like she reads a lot of romance, but she reads a lot of sort of contemporaries. And like when I'm persuading her to read like my two sort of more niche interests, which is historical and monster romance at the moment for academic reasons, I'm always just sending her like unhinged things and expecting her to like be like, sure, sounds great. I'll devote hours of my life to this. So I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I'm having a brainwave. You need to read all of the Kleypas books. And she was like, I'm not going to read it. That's like 15 books.
You're insane.
I'm not going to do that. And I was like, so I was like, no, but you don't understand. Like, you have to read at least one from each of these categories so you can understand what I'm talking about. So then I made the
so
chart,
forever
I was
and
like,
ever, when we talk about men, we can.
exactly. So you're aware that this is what I'm referring to. She has at this point now read The Wallflowers and The Ravenels. I have not gotten her to read The Hathaways or
So I've
Derek
never
Craven
read
yet,
The
but
Hathaways. They are in the vault. I'm saving them for I don't know.
Okay.
I guess societal collapse. If I'm being honest,
I mean, you may be reading it sooner than you expect, but
I know it could be
definitely.
Nope, this is a fun episode.
Oh, right,
Fun
sorry.
one, guys.
Just kidding. It's never to be read. But yeah, so I made the chart for her and I was like, she's just not appreciating this the way that I need her
she
to
should
like understand what this like work of art has been to me. So I was like, who better than to
The
just
Fated Mates,
DM
yes.
Jen out of the blue. The funny thing about this is also that like I was like, I can't put this on my Twitter account because I'm applying to master's programs. Every single one of my doctoral interviews, I was like, I read romance novels and I talk about them on the internet. Like, I didn't private a single thing. I told everybody.
Nice.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure I got offers from every school where I talked about romance novels in them. So, like, moral of the story is like, maybe I didn't have to be doing all of that and like put Jen through the work of like, you know,
was great. I enjoyed
monitoring. Like, you had so many comments.
It was
being like,
crazy. Yeah.
you should be doing this and you should be doing that. And I
And
was like,
I'll
Jen's
pass
not
these
doing
on.
that. Like, stop bullying her. Like, be nice, you know. But like, okay, so that's what it was. Let me actually pull up the chart itself. There are like 4 iterations, and I'm having
Yeah.
difficulty finding V4. But
V4.
Yes. Well, because they were like, yeah, V1, V2, right?
I don't know what one I'm
Yeah.
looking at, so I might have an
I
old
think
one.
that you might have V3.
Okay.
I think I have.
okay, yes, V4 I have now. It was February 11th, 2021. So at this point, a few years, which is wild.
So we might be making changes right here, right now.
Yeah, anything is possible. I'm more than happy to edit. Like, things do change as you reread and come back to them. Okay, yeah. So the first category are the reformed rakes and degenerates, the ones who have like a really witty sense of humor. So Sebastian, Lord St. Vincent / Duke of Kingston, we're trying to be specific about titles here,
Thank you.
is in that one.
Sebastian
Leo Hathaway,
would
Lord
want
Ramsay.
that.
Of course. His due credit. Gideon Shaw from Again the Magic, Devon Ravenel, Lord Trenier, and West Ravenel. West, I still feel a question mark about where to put him.
Yeah.
He is a reformed rake, but like he's more of a reformed alcoholic. But I mean, so is Gideon Shaw. Who's to say? Anyway,
Yeah.
I think that's up for debate. And that's that category. Then there's the entirely too clever industrialist / working class man. So, you know,
This
you've
is
got
where
Tom
now
Severin
when
in here.
somebody asks me about a Kleypas hero, when somebody's like, what kind of heroes is Kleypas write? This is where I'm at. I'm like, every one of them is like the greatest at their job. Like invented the railroads, like invented the department stores, invented farming.
Yeah.
You know what's
100%.
No one's ever gambled before Derek Craven.
No, right. They're always the best at their job.
Listen, I love it. I mean, give it to me.
I love the way that people talk about work and romance, and it's a really special category because like
and Lisa really likes work.
Yeah.
Yes. The number of things I've learned about like 18th century land management
boilers
for research.
Yeah.
How
and
to
somehow
make
it's interesting, right? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, for me, the thing that's really interesting about Tom Severin, and also this is kind of shows up in Garrett Gibson's book too, is like how much work there was to actually persuade people to use trains, like
Yeah.
all of this sort of marketing campaigns, the festival. That was fascinating to me.
Yeah.
But again, not something people would necessarily expect to get out of a romance novel, but if you pay attention, you will. But yeah, so Simon Hunt is in there. Zachary Bronson is in there. Harry Rutledge, who like invented the hotel, I guess. Cameron Hunt. I put him in there because like he's kind of a brilliant investor. And there's this like really funny scene in the Hathaways where he is like, yeah, as a joke, I invested a bunch of money in this company that was like building these stretchy rubber things, and it ends up being a factory of rubber bands. So he makes $1 bajillion off of investing in rubber bands. And then it's about the yearning heroes, which of course
there's I like the note about the yearning one.
Yeah, it's really important. They all yearn, but these are some special yearners. Reese Winterbourne is in there. Kev Merklin is at the very top.
Top yearner.
He's like invented yearning.
So it's the top earners and the top yearners.
Oh, well said. Yes, that's good. We can give them like sub taglines.
Yeah, right. There you go.
You know? I mean, I think that's canon. Like, there's no discussion on who the top yearner is. Like, it's Kev.
Yeah, it's like a self-destructive
carrying her around for that's the only time he'll allow himself to touch her for years.
Yeah, I don't really. Too much. Yeah, Kate Claiborne is her favorite, and I'm like, no, it just sounds
great,
like,
but it's too much.
I'd have to be in a real special place. I'm gonna have to want to sink somebody into the ground to read about a man suffering like that.
But I also think there's like a qualifier here in the yearning category that I want to propose, because you have McKenna in the yearning category. And what I want is some like a sub yearning category where I'm yearning so much I want to kill things. Or possibly you.
Love that. Oh, like, yeah. That's a really special.
Like angry yearning. Yeah, like, I'm angry at myself for feeling this way.
I'm so mad about how much I am yearning.
What are feelings?
I would say, see, it's interesting. It's hard. This is because these are bucketed. But like Christopher Phelan goes through a period of this in his book as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because when he finds out that he's been yearning for the wrong girl, he just loses
he's so
his mind.
mad.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's one of the best moments in the whole book where he's like, I'm going to kill her. But the thing is, Derek Craven also has a I'm going to kill her moment.
Yeah.
There's something about like homicide as yearning that I'm like really drawn to.
I mean, it's not great. It's not the best,
sure.
But it is
content
also the
warning
best.
on the patriarchy, but I love it. Fine.
Also, like, they're not actually going to do it.
No.
Hyperbole. Like,
also there's something like I want him to feel every feeling at 11, including yearn killing.
Yeah. 100%.
It's yearning.
Do you both watch
side.
Grey's Anatomy at all?
Yeah, I did back in the day. Yeah, I've not watched all 27 seasons or whatever.
Recently.
I'm hate watching my way through the first 10 seasons of it at the moment. And I recently picked up on the concept of referred pain, where like when you experience pain to a main part of your torso, your body like can't process it and refers it elsewhere. So like when people experience pain in their arm and it's like a signal that you're having a heart attack or something. That's what I feel the homicide as yearning is.
Yes.
It's referred pain.
I like it.
Like,
oh, absolutely.
Instead of like, it's self-flagellation sublimated into murder, but not really. Like yearning for murder, you know, that's what it is. That's a good caveat. And there are a few that go in there because Captain Phelan, McKenna.
I mean, nobody, again, top yearn homicide is McKenna.
Yeah.
So much so that he's then decided to like come back and kill most of England, like as part of it.
Yeah.
Sure. Just let me blow that whole place up.
Yes. It's really good. That's also like such a specifically historical romance feature that I'm so drawn to. I've been talking to my friends a lot about Private Arrangements by
Sherry Thomas,
where the hero in that is like, I had histrionic fantasies of like ruining your life because I'm so in love with you, basically. Yeah, I do. I am a sucker for that generally.
Again, it's not great, but it's super great.
Exactly. These aren't necessarily like models for intimacy, obviously. So
wait, I have a question. Can I fine tune the murder yearning? So like
sure.
When Derek Craven thinks that Sarah is dead, Is that like the opposite? Like almost like suicidal yearning?
Murder, resurrection.
Suicidal yearning.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Right? I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe
Well,
that's
I
wrong.
feel
to
like
bring up,
all
but
of them, though, have that edge.
Yeah.
Like, at any point, any one of these men could just go right off a cliff.
Yeah. Like if I'm not with her. Yeah.
If she, like, there is a real Clapus vibe of, like, if she dies, I die. Like,
right. Not like if like
if
we
she
love
dies, you die is
right.
one
That
side.
is that's a different yes.
And then if she dies, I just don't live.
Yes. They're all kind of confronting like an existential dread. Like there is an existential wound in all of these heroes that I'm finding really compelling.
Well, and I think it's like fascinating because if it goes from like, I don't deserve love, I never want love, to like then, okay, I was saddled with it, but now I can't live without it. Right? Like this has now, maybe the reason I was resisting it because I knew it would change me at the molecular level, but now I'm changed and that's all there is to it.
Yeah. Well, I think this is particularly unsubtle in Derek Craven because he literally talks about having such a fascination with death in his younger years. And like, I mean, then literally being a grave robber, but he sort of is like flirting with an absence of meaning and total nihilism. And then he's like completely rocked, which I mean, I just find really charming.
Me too. Listen, talk about you. He's like, I will get you a mud puddle, but first let me roll around literally in the ashes of my burned casino and weep for my lost love. I don't hate it.
Imagine if she really was dead. What would he have done?
He'd just still lay there. Someone pour some mint on him. Yes.
No, he would, or would he have like
he would gone into murder?
London.
He would have murdered. Yeah, right.
He would have Jack the Rippered his way through the men of London.
Yeah,
not women. Yeah. And then
totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just wouldn't have a London.
And then straight into the Thames.
Yeah.
He'd go up in blazes.
I mean, I hate to say it, but like, you know how I hate to say it, but like Bella in Twilight basically pulls this move, right?
Yeah.
Like after Edward breaks up with her, it's like, she's like, what can I do to feel alive? Right. And I think that it's like that, a similar thing. What can I do to feel alive?
Poor Derek.
And that's why they're yearners.
Yeah,
I mean, all of them, the difficulty with the yearning hero category is just that everyone thinks that the hero they like best is the best yearner. And I understand. Like, I understand the reasoning. There was a lot of like, doesn't he yearn enough? And I'm like, okay, totally. But there must be order, you know? Like,
there must be order. You're right. I also feel like I have point of order. I'm gonna counter Winterborn on this. I appreciate that you say he fits in every category. This is what Sanj has left a footnote here about Rhys. And it says, Rhys Winterborn fits every category but the reform rakes. But he did spend 2 books, bold, obsessing over Helen. So he will stay here with the acknowledgement that he is magic. Fair. I do think Rhys moves way too quickly for us to consider him as top yearner. Like, he's not. There is 5 minutes where he has allowed himself to yearn, and then he's after her. So
totally.
Yeah, I think he's like, I recognize this feeling. Let me go ahead and take care of it.
Yeah.
Oh, total. Let me make you an orchid garden
and learn how to orchid.
So let's learn about orchids for sure. Like, yeah.
We're not in the last category yet, but in the first version, Jack Devlin was in working class industrial. And I was like, listen, I think he belongs in proper in the sheets, animal in the sheets, proper in the streets, animal in the sheets, because I was like, he is the only one with a hint of butt stuff. Like, he's the one who's like,
you haven't read the
Hathaways?
The Hathaways. Cam has a ring on his thumb and puts it right up in her.
Oh, fascinating.
So, I mean, if butt stuff moves you over there.
Yeah. I'm just saying, he's like inventive and fun in the sack in a way a lot of these men are not.
There is like a butt stuff addendum on here, and I think it's important scholarly work personally. I also was like not made aware of the butt stuff in Mine Till Midnight until like much later. I guess I just didn't notice it. Like, there's kind of an interesting moment where he's like, his ring is on his thumb finger, and like
the ring
she feels
to
it.
Like, you know,
it's
do the business.
But
down
I guess
there.
I didn't process like intellectually
Cam,
what's happening.
Not a boy anymore.
Exactly. Like, he's all grown up, and Amelia is experiencing things big time, and it's really something. Yeah. Oh gosh. Now I'm like wondering. I'll give it some thought. We'll give it some thought. I mean,
obviously, this is your work.
I mean, a lot of this was crowdsourced, though. People did have to do quite a few. I did have to do quite a. There's a good reason for there being 4 versions. I just was not giving the Bow Street runners enough
Oh, yeah,
credit.
right.
Now, wait a second, because that is my question. There are no Bow Street runners in here.
Well, there's Sir Ross Cannon.
Oh, he's not on my version. Where do you have him?
He's in V4. He's in V4.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta go back and
then Mr. Russian time traveler. Where's he?
oh gosh, that one I have no idea what to do
That
with.
is such a weird
That
book.
book is bizarre. I have such a hard time
Yeah.
explaining that book to people because I'm like, it feels like none of the others.
Yeah,
And
he
yet-
goes into reform rigs, I think, but
It's funny
Yeah.
because I just sent you to a link in the chat. There's a woman named Grace Evans made a Venn diagram
I saw that.
of
I
the
was really
Clapus
compelled
heroes.
by that.
I know. And her 3 big categories
we will
were
put this in show notes.
you will put it in
everyone,
show notes too. And we'll try and find Grace to thank her. I don't know if she's still on, who knows. Fix it with charm, fix it with a contract, or I don't deserve to fix it. And I was like, oh, that's smart.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm looking at interesting.
No.
I mean, people really came to town with like their best Clapus thoughts here. And I just think that that's nice.
oh, and I look Sebastian in the middle of it.
Yeah, because he's all of them, right?
He is the one that where she combined everyone.
It's kind of, I mean, again, theories on masculinity. And if she's experimenting with that all the time, got to put it somewhere. I'm so interested in this. I like the West Ravenel placement of I don't deserve to fix it because that really is his thing, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah.
no, I'm seeing version 4. No, I'm not. I still don't have
Yeah.
Ross.
Here, let me see.
Well, I also think it's like if you combine the two, right? Like I don't deserve to fix it, and yearning would clearly create a hero who would act very differently than like I don't deserve to fix it, like reformed rake. I mean, so like the other thing is, it's like if we think about it as like mindset versus like I don't know, like a property of like the way you operate in the world, then it's like really interesting too to like kind of put all these things together.
But I do feel also like all Clapus heroes at some point at the end feel I don't deserve to fix it. Like, I mean, they get to a place where like they obviously don't even deserve to breathe the same air as heroin.
Totally.
Right.
Which that's the whole ball game. That's how I want all romance heroes to feel.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I think
of
a bit of
patriarchy.
humility is for the best. Totally. Yeah.
All right. So there's version 4, Sarah.
I'm looking at it now.
Okay.
Yes, there is. So Alex Lord Rayford is in there, and Sir Ross Cannon is also in there. Sir Ross Cannon has like a very interesting like chair situation in his book where he like sets her up in some sort of like medieval like desk
Sex
chair.
chair.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a sex chair scene which I think warrants him being proper in the streets, animal in the sheets. This is a
I would
very
agree with
misunderstood category.
Okay.
It's a very
Okay.
misunderstood category. I think a lot of
Explain.
people were sort of like, well, my intention was just to say like people who or like the heroes who are really concerned with like propriety and order and status are the most like conventionally like wealthy established in society of all of the Clapus heroes.
Mhm.
But obviously, as with all heroes, is like, a consummate professional in bed, of course. And like the thing about this is that obviously all of them are great. The question should
right.
not be who is good in bed. Everyone is.
No,
But I think it's
they're
the
all great
fixation
in bed.
on
This is romance. Come on.
propriety and like
Mhm.
established order. So like that's why Marcus is at the top because he's so like prim and proper until he loses his mind in that library
Mhm.
and like can't stop thinking about this woman who's trying to get a pear out of a jar. So like he's and Captain Phelan similarly has this thing of like I'm this like tortured military guy who like can't touch this like beautiful young like unspoiled creature of the woods and wildness, but also like it's unseemly for us to be seen together, and then they like have sex in a barn. So everybody
Sure.
wins. And then Alex Lord Rayford is also very established, but I wouldn't necessarily say he was ever like a very prim and proper person. Like
No.
he just is conventionally titled and like grew up in that wealth and didn't have to come to it randomly in his later years as many of these other individuals did. even the titled ones. And then Gabriel Lord St. Vincent is also on there. And he is very proper and grew up entitled and all of that, but he has like ghost of BDSM in there. Like he likes some rope stuff and he's like really beat up about it. But like
It's
in a way
really
that
funny,
is so funny.
Just
he's,
chill,
he's really
Gabriel. You're
convinced,
fine.
I have to admit, yeah, I recently listened to Devil in Spring for the first time in a couple years. And I like laughed out loud several times. I mean, that book is genuinely funny in a way that like a lot of Clay books are like more serious. I mean,
yeah,
it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, his whole thing, I'm like, you know, I'm just too much of a libertine for her.
which is outrageous. I mean, even his dad is like, be
Come
for
on.
real.
Yeah.
Like he has that great line where he's like, my father did things that would make satyrs blush. Like, you think you're all that.
Right.
Yeah. It's really good. It's a great moment. It's a really good moment. He is like, he's still, that's the thing too. I really love Devil in Spring, but Sebastian is all over that book as well. Like, crawling over it.
I think the thing that for me, it's like, there's a way in which it's like he's aiding the main couple as opposed to like being kind of front and center.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that like it kind of, it just like the balance was for me out of whack in that last one, right? Whereas it was more in sync in earlier ones.
But it had to be. I mean, the backstory of that character is essential to Sebastian. I mean, like, Sebastian has to be there.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the moment where Gabriel is sort of like, I'm not a rake. My dad was a rake. He keeps having to be like, I'm not my dad.
I'm not that St. Vincent.
Yeah.
Exactly. But there's also some really interesting characterization of aging Sebastian that I find really like kind of lovely to see, where it's like not obtrusive. And it's one of the moments when Pandora first notices, like, she says this thing that has literally stuck in my mind since I read it, where she says that Sebastian has the look of a man who genuinely likes women.
Yeah.
Like, is just charmed by them, is interested in them. And that's so good.
Right.
Like, that is such a good remake of what was previously.
What made someone a rake, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It's a really good spin. But yeah, so there are some missing pieces here. We don't have Care from Care.
I think Care. I don't know.
Sorry to Scottish people. Care from Devil in Disguise, and a couple of the Bow Street
Runners are missing. Mr. Russian Time Traveler is missing.
Hold on. T, if we're going to apologize to the good people of Scotland for the things historical romance has done to them, we're going to be here all night. So I'm just going to say.
So true.
But really has filled the coffers of tourism in Scotland for a while. So you're welcome for all those ladies who come.
Sure.
That's fair. That's fair. We give it and we take. Like, it's,
exactly.
Great.
Yeah. I'm looking.
Yeah.
It's Midnight
and that's
Angel.
The category.
Is
that last category. Oh,
is that what it's called? Midnight Angel, the Russian one, Stokehurst.
It has a purple cover.
No, wait. This is. Wait, is this right? No, this is wrong. This is another one. Midnight Angel is. She fakes her own death to escape the gallows. What book is this?
I don't know. Something
I have not read that one.
Oh boy, everyone. No, there is. This is the one. I just don't remember that being the beginning. That's weird. But anyway, this is part Russian. There's selective amnesia.
Sure.
A tiger.
And there's also like a full-on dream sequence of him living a past life as a Russian
for
oligarch.
Like 100 pages. He dreams of being an oligarch.
It is bananas.
It is really, really, yes, very odd. And they're like distant cousins. There's a lot.
Yes.
There's a lot in this one.
Mm-hmm.
And
so I not on the chart yet.
No, but I will totally reread it to help you put it on the chart. I mean, listen, this is my thing. Like, even the weirdest Kleypas book is definitely a fun read. So
yeah, I completely agree. Like, the Bow Street Runners are not the ones I reread most often, but like, there's nothing but a good time to be had.
Is Suddenly You in here?
Yeah, Devlin goes.
Oh, Devlin, Jack Devlin, of course.
Yeah. He was the
Our
one who was
famous
originally
butt stuff
in.
addendum.
Yeah,
Butt
and
stuff
I was
addendum.
like part of the butt stuff, and I was like, look, he's a lot of fun in the sack. I think he belongs in the streets.
That is a great book.
Yeah, that is a great book. That is a great book.
And they do. Yeah, I mean, they all yearn. Oh. Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa's beautiful heroes.
I think the thing that's really fun about categorizations like this, which are obviously always going to be imperfect and works in progress, et cetera, every caveat, is that like you kind of see her relationship as an author change to the text. Like the sort of iteration where you're like, oh yes, totally, Leo Hathaway is totally a later iteration of Saint Vincent. Like he's kind of a degenerate, has like an opium problem, but he is like deeply haunted by grief and loss. In Leo's case, it is his former lover, but in Sebastian's case, it's like all of his sisters who died of scarlet fever. Like you're seeing like, and then suddenly comes into this massive responsibility and becomes preoccupied with like kind of a stuffy, prim, theoretically unattractive woman who like slips into his line of sight.
Theoretically
like
unattractive.
Always, because for some reason they're all just wearing like a terrible, ugly lace cap that like makes them look like they're 3 steps from joining a convent. But like the thing is, Leo is like a softer version. Like he's a soft succession. And so even as you see these like ghosts of rakes past in the more recent ones, like there's something different to be charmed by, I think. Even the industrialists get like more complex and like more like Reese is a later iteration of like Zachary Bronson and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
But there's something there about the growth that I find. I wouldn't even necessarily say growth, just like evolution.
You know, my friend Hannah, who loves Cleopus, like is always like everybody. She's just like, if you need it, you can always just count on Cleopus for a good kidnapping, right? And that was true,
yes,
but it is not true anymore.
Mm-mm.
And I think one of the things that's then really interesting is like to think about like in the Ravenels, like what has like filled that, right? And it's interesting to me, like the way that some of these things have like played out in different ways, right? So like there's sort of like sedition and, you know, like for Pandora and for Garrett, like, right, like this threat from outside Garrett. But, you know, for like Tom Severin and Cassandra, it's this orphan child, right? And like sort of poverty, like this sort of that they're going to sort of face. I think there's like a really explicit way in which like several of these heroines get the like use this money to save more than just yourself. And I think that part's really interesting too. Like as she has like changed or evolved in the way she deals with her characters in some way, we've seen some of what I would consider like those Cleopus hallmarks, right? A good kidnapping, disappearing.
Yeah. I guess in Severin and Cassandra's book, there is like literally a 4-second kidnapping.
Yeah, but not of her, right? Literally. Of this boy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. I think the last like traditional kidnapping was Harry Rutledge getting kidnapped at the end of his book, and then Poppy having to go get him when he's like stuck in a wall.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Because he wouldn't make a gun. That was really something.
I don't remember that part. He wouldn't make a gun.
Yes. So he's like a brilliant inventor on top of being someone who invented hotels. And so,
wait, he's the one who has all the automatons.
Yeah. And he like meets with a defense contractor who's like, if you make this, England will win every war forever. And he's like, I'm not going to do that. And this guy is like, okay, I'll kidnap you and lock you in a room until you build the gun that I want you to build. And Poppy is like, that's not going to fly for me.
So it's like a proto Iron Man, but he says no.
Yes,
exactly.
Literally,
this could have been the Cleopus Avengers, but he was like, no.
Yes.
Oh my God, the Cleopus Avengers. That's next year's episode.
Next year.
I mean, I'll send in my ideas.
You volunteer as tribute.
I'm sure people have strong ideas about that too.
Oh yeah.
But like I also think that like in some way as these series progress, the like outside world of like London and like globalism and industrialization become more pervasive literal threats in these books where like part of the reason why this whole like sedition plotline is happening is
she moved the whole thing, right? Sebastian it's a whole generation forward.
Yeah, right.
And she was already writing Victorian. I mean,
Yeah.
she really is in it. Like the industrial shit is happening. And it's trickier when you get that late in. I mean, listen, London was always terrible. Like there are lots of things to talk about in terms of like the way London treats people. But like when you get that far in, you're talking about mega industrialization and a lot of terrible things that happen. So yeah, she's got to figure out a pathway. It's not kidnapping. It's, match girls face rotting.
Yeah.
It's not that in any of the books, everyone, but
this makes me want to, you know what this makes me want to do though, is like go back and reread the contemporaries, which I think happened between the Wallflowers and the Hathaways. Like if we were looking at the publication date, is that correct?
It was when she switched from HarperCollins to St. Martin's.
Right. I think it would be really interesting to read them in like light of these categories or the other categories, right? And think like because I mean, certainly like I think you can lean a lot harder into like the industrialist and the like, like the, and I think it, was oil. It was like Hardy Cates. And, I mean, I think it's really interesting to think about. I just said it like a magic word,
so
right?
Much.
Still haven't read them.
Oh, really?
That's the one, Sanj. That's the one to read.
I think it would be interesting. I'm just saying, like, to think.
Well, and then she did that, like, she did that batch of like magical realism ones where like she could bake food and like change one of them was like a baker and her food could change your like emotions, and another one could like turn glass into animals. Like
I haven't read those either. She's like, wait a minute.
I'm furiously Googling.
No, there's one, and like all I can remember is like there's a stained glass window and she like turns it into a giant field of butterflies. Which I might have just ruined for everyone, but
is this Crystal Cove? No.
Yes.
Yes.
Friday,
I think that was right.
Harbor. Oh my God.
You don't have anything else to do, right? You could just
read
all these. It's fine.
My semester totally didn't just start.
No.
I'll start on the class tonight.
This is important work. And then in one of those, she explores like shibari. Like you can see Lisa really trying
things. Yes, right.
And this is why like that I keep going back to that Russian time travel book, but like there are some books that she has written that really do feel like she was like, I'm going to try something completely different here. And like I said, like even the weirdest Kleypas is
still has
pretty
something
fun to read.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like even a least favorite for me is still going to be like, better than a lot of other books. Like
definitely. I mean, she's clearly one of the best of us.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even the ones. Yes. I'll just say agree. Like it's like Lisa Kleypas is like pizza. It's always good.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And like, I do think there's something really interesting and kind of like the thing that some of these like complex existential threats around industrialization and stuff that like show up in the Ravenels are things that are teased in earlier work. Like it's such a the thing about looking at her work is that it is such an interesting body of work. Like to single out any singular book as like the only one that you should read feels like you're not going to get the picture, right? Like there's a picture happening where like these people are developing intimate relations in a world that's increasingly like hostile and alienating and consumerist and capital. Like it's all of that is happening,
So to that end, if somebody is listening right now and has never read a Kleypas book, I know, first of all, what are you doing here? Has this been real weird for you this last hour? Obviously, we love Derek Craven, but I'm not sure he's the one that I would recommend as the first in 2024. So what do we recommend?
Is it totally nuts to say Again the Magic?
It's so good. It's so good.
You're getting 2 in one.
And
you're getting
secondary love story is I mean, I say it all the time. It's my favorite. It might be my favorite romance novel, that secondary love story.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I also think like there's part of me that really
Why am I
wants
such a sucker for like, I will quit drinking for you? Like, I will leave and get dry and then come back
Mhm.
like years later to save you.
Again, the magic for me is like the historical cousin to Nobody's Baby But Mine by Susan Elizabeth Phillips, where there's
Mhm.
like a total banger of a B plot
Of a
where
secondary
like there's
love story.
again like let me reform to like capture this thing I know we have / could have. And that book is also amazing. I'm always like waxing poetic about Nobody's Baby But Mine, but
Same.
Yeah,
I think
that book
there's
is so good.
an
yeah.
adjacency here that's worthwhile.
I really struggle with addiction and romance when it's in the A plot
Mm.
because what I deeply want for a character who's struggling with addiction in a romance novel is to like leave the book and go take care of themselves and heal, whatever that looks like.
Mhm.
And then when you are ready to find love
And
again,
come back ready for love. Yeah.
right? And that's
Mhm.
probably why that works for me because that, right?
Mhm.
It's interesting though, because I think that there is a large swath of romance readers who would rather not see it that way. Like who would rather see them like believe that there is like that it be immediate. Like the
Yeah.
characters doing the work
Mm.
has to be like on page with the other character. And I agree with you. Like I think
Yeah.
it has to be off page.
I think I'm just too steeped in
Mhm.
the whole idea of like when you're going through recovery, like they say to you,
They
right?
say don't start a relationship.
Don't start a relationship for like a year. Like you have to be yourself first. And I think I just really believe that about every kind of relationship. Like if you're entering into it and you're not yourself,
Yeah.
not your best self, but like yourself, right? Then
yes.
Yeah.
In this
So-
particular book, there is a
Yeah.
secondary love story. Everyone, check your content warnings. But I'm going to tell you there is an addiction plot line, but he does do his own work.
Mhm.
I agree. Again, the magic is a good starting
That's a
point.
good- that's a
It's
great
also, I think you're
recommendation.
right, Sanj. It's also really good for new readers in 2024. Like,
Yeah.
it's a little bit quieter.
Mhm.
But you
Mhm.
don't have to know all the players from earlier series, which I think
Mhm.
is
Can be
a
hard.
piece
Yeah.
of the Ravenel challenge,
Problem, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's true.
Suddenly you is very fun.
Yeah.
Jack Devlin knows what he's about. There is also a miscarriage in that one, which like,
Oh,
I
right.
mean,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like, I don't
But-
know. It doesn't occupy a ton of page time. And I don't think that's necessarily a reason to avoid it as a book. And it does a lot of the other things that are really interesting. The writer heroine, the like industrialist publisher as a hero, the like premise itself is so fun. But
Yeah.
like,
that is the piece of Kleypas that I think often like it's Hannah's point of like, if you want a reliable kidnapping,
Yes.
Right?
Right. Of
Mhm.
course.
I think so many of us who came to Kleypas years ago feel like there is you want a Kleypas book to deliver a kind of wild plot
yes.
in some way.
Yeah.
And suddenly you has that. She's turning 30 and
yeah.
she has this albatross around her neck of her virginity and she would like someone to
Oh.
rid her of it. And so she hires a courtesan to come to her home and rid her of her virginity. And the doorbell rings and she opens it and a very handsome man is standing there. And she thinks that he is her sex worker for the evening. And he is
Mhm.
like, okay, I
As you
guess
do.
I'm just going to go along with this.
Seems fun.
And that's like chapter 1. So a very fun one.
I do love that like she has so many heroines who are independently wealthy because I think Lily, Lawless Lily in
Yep.
Then
Right.
Came You, if that's her book,
Yep.
is also, I mean,
She's
until
an
she gives away a
opera
bunch
singer,
more money
right?
because of a kidnapping situation.
Yeah. See?
She's got like an Italian count ex-husband or something who's been like, dragging her
Mhm.
child around. So, well, yes, she's independently wealthy and like, in Suddenly You, she's independently wealthy. Evie is wealthier than Sebastian. Like in a lot of circumstances, I think economic reliance is like a really huge motivating.
Right. Lillian is like a perfume.
Yeah. Right.
Oh yeah, heiress. She's an
Yeah.
heiress. That's right.
Right.
I really love that. I think that's fun.
I do think the wallflowers are a solid.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the
I-
wallflowers would be a solid choice.
Often skip summer, not for any reason than just because I want to get right into that autumn, winter, spring.
Sure.
But summer's great too. So
Is that Westcliff?
yeah.
Right.
No, Westcliff is
it's autumn. That's right.
A short king.
A short
If
king.
you like
I
a
just wanted to
short
say
king.
a short king.
Yes.
Somebody
sorry,
the other day like tweeted or something like,
It was me.
Was it you?
No, yeah, it was like I asked Kelly. I asked Kelly to Photoshop in Westcliff where it says
Calvin Klein.
Calvin Klein on that picture of Jeremy Allen White, and I was a short
No,
king.
that's not what I'm thinking of. Though
okay.
I'm thinking of somebody else who posted a screenshot of a later book, a book like that isn't autumn, where Westcliff is referenced, and so is his height. The commentary was
It was
he
Ambriel.
always taking an opportunity to remind us that
Every
Westcliff
time.
is short.
Every time. Yeah, it was Ambriel.
Every
Really
time.
funny. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All of these are great choices. I could also maybe make a case for Zachary Bronson, which is a straight up Beauty and the Beast like retelling, right?
Yeah.
And I love those. I think that like lots of readers do. And I think that like the comfort with sort of like the way this plot is going would really like maybe
That's where dreams begin.
yeah. So I mean, I could make a case for that being and I think it's also a standalone, right?
Yes. And the first line of the cover copy is Zachary Bronson has built an empire of wealth and power because
Yes, he
of
has.
course he
Yes, he has.
They all think the accruing of capital will solve their problems. And then guess what? So this is why, okay, I like kind of got into fake economics discourse with people about like this on TikTok like a year ago because like, why not? But where someone was like, she loves a capitalist hero. And I was like, do you think she's not being deeply critical of like
totally
industrial exploitation?
Money
in
can't
all of,
buy
like,
everything. Yeah.
every single one of those men is so rich and so unhappy. Like they are profoundly disturbed.
Yes, right.
And they're all forced to lose. Like she strips them bare, all of them.
Yeah.
Yes. It's just, I'm like, I don't know. I think there's something else to the story here. Where, like,
right, exactly.
Tom Severin is such a good example of this. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, like, my favorite is every single Kleypas hero. The new one comes out and it's like, no, this one's the wealthiest and most powerful.
Oh, yes.
Everything I told you before, here's a new one.
Here's a new one.
That whole scene that's dedicated to being like, yeah, we do know that Reese is wealthy, but just think, Tom has like 8 million times that. So
Yeah, exactly.
like,
1.5
my boyfriend's
more
better
than
your
what we have.
boyfriend.
Yeah. These 3 dumb sisters who have never seen anything but Hampshire landed the 3 most eligible bachelors, the 3 richest dudes.
And good for them.
I don't care.
Good for them.
Even if it's romance reasons, it's perfect.
Yeah.
I don't.
right.
I have no notes on any of this.
But I mean, I think what's interesting about Severin in particular, which
I would not start with Severin, everyone.
No,
That is
I
where
would not
begin.
either. I wouldn't at all. I think you have to I think that he is such an outsider in a way that like Reese thinks he's an outsider, but isn't even in the way that Tom is. And I think it's really interesting to see like him as a character, like he is not after a society wife the same way Reese Winterbourne is, right? He wants something different. And it's really, really interesting to me the way, like, I don't know. I'm the first time I read it, I was like, it was fine. But in the interim, I've read it a couple more times and have been really like, oh, there's so much interesting stuff going on here, right?
Yeah. I love that book, but again, it's the situation of like there's so many other characters who like make appearances. So like,
oh yeah, no,
it's real care and feeding. Yeah,
who's West and who's Westcliff and who's there are just too many other questions to answer. And also, it's like it is very different. You're right too that like I think some of the tone and context of other Kleypas novels, like if this is going to be your primer to it, it will feel very different if you go back then and read
this is I wouldn't read it
any of the Wallflowers.
Yeah,
like,
no.
or anything
Like
that.
read that last. I mean, it's a different book.
And I love it. It's so good. the newspaper. He buys her a newspaper.
Listen, the best.
How can you? It's so good. It's so good.
It is.
I love it. In every book, it's like, and he buys her. Fill in the blank. Here's the thing. Every Kleypas hero is like, what is the problem that you have? Let me just throw all my money at solving whatever your problem is. And that's really compelling in late stage capitalism.
Right. And then it's like, and then please take your money and solve the world's problems, you think, right?
Yeah. Well, West is a notable departure from these because he is like so broke and like not like even in inheriting or whatever he might get, he's not going to get a lot from Phoebe. He has like a little parcel of land. I think he and Kev
Christopher
are the
Phelan,
two who, like,
doesn't have any money.
That's right. He's got that estate that he never wanted to inherit. There. I think those are the three like notable exceptions to that. Like, let me throw money at your problem.
Listen,
and still,
an hour and a half
they're
in,
winners.
I feel like we could keep going
forever.
For hours. That's the best thing
There's
about
so much.
Derek Craven Day
I
episodes.
think earlier this week, I was like, Sarah's like, should we prepare something? And I was like, I trust the process. That's what I say to my husband all the time right now. We were like downtown Chicago and he was like, where are we going to park? And I was like, just trust the process. And like, I turned the corner and there was like a parking spot right there. And he's like, what the fuck? And I was like, listen, I told you just trust.
Yeah.
And tonight,
put it into the universe.
I was like, this is just all going to flow with zero problem. Trust the process.
And it sure did. So
there's Kleypas magic afoot.
Yeah, that's it.
There is.
But like not in the Russian ancestor way.
I mean, who knows? Any one of us could go to sleep tonight and like dream for a year for 100 pages about being a Russian oligarch.
I'm going to update you both in the morning. Are you going to make TikToks then about why Derek Craven is a Marxist treatise? Because I think we've run out of time here.
To know about that.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or are you going to preview that?
I will absolutely.
Okay.
I'm happy to preview it here. I mean, it's very simple. I think it's just that thing of like, he keeps talking about like how the accrual of wealth, like he is like capitalist exploitation embodied at the beginning. And he's sort of this like libertarian fantasy of someone who like pulled himself up by his bootstraps.
Born in a drain
pipe and, hawked his wares, including his body, at the potential prostitution, until he like achieved status and respect. And it just was hollow and empty and not what he wanted. And also he like alienates himself from like the work and the people that he like, the thing that he seeks all his life is the thing that corrupts him more than like the circumstances of his birth or anything like that. And this sort of like myth of capitalist upward mobility is the thing that he really buys into at the beginning of the book, right? And like it's the thing that he thinks will sustain him. And then he's like, I have ennui. I have rich man disease of ennui, which is the funniest. It's like one of the funniest lines. The first third of that book is so funny. Like it really is so funny because he takes himself so seriously.
Well, the gaudy, like everything, and he's designed everything in gold and like scrolls, and it's awful. It just sounds awful. And how it's supposed to make you feel like, ugh.
Right. And but the way that like everyone loves Sarah and Worthy and everyone's always like, it's great. Like, listen, what a book. To me, I will say this, right? Derek Craven Day, you don't have to love Derek Craven to love Derek Craven Day. You just have to love romance.
Exactly.
Right? It's simple, everybody. It's not complicated.
To celebrate Derek Craven Day, go talk to somebody about romance novels.
Yeah.
100%.
It doesn't even have to be Elisa Kleypas.
Encouraged, but not required.
Or
exactly.
In the Sanj method, go to Spotify and just enter in your favorite romance novel and listen to whatever podcast appears. Probably ours.
I'm so truly so glad that I found it. Oh, I started reading Immortals After Dark after listening to that episode. I was like, Did
you enjoy it?
I joined here. Yeah, of course. I've read it all. I have like strong personal feelings about Lothair and I can't do anything about it. I also read the Mafia series.
Wait, positive or negative feelings about Lothair?
Positive.
I don't know. You said strong personal, and I was like,
"Oh yeah, sorry." I have
he
strong
your
feelings about it all, but positive.
Lothair's your fave.
Gosh, it's hard. I maybe
it is hard.
Here, right? You're like, yeah,
it's tough. It's really tough. That book is so speaking of bananas, but I just
yeah.
I can't get over the ripping your heart out with your bare hands and sticking it in a
Yes.
box.
And then when
Listen,
she
no.
sends her finger back,
Mhm.
terrific.
That's masterful.
Also, I imagine you, like me, really
Yeah.
love that scene with Lothair and Nyx, where they talk about just being old.
Yes.
It's the greatest scene in the whole series.
Yes. I think about it all the time.
Me too. I think about that scene all the time. Just like how tired
About
they are.
memory and immortality and how much mortality is the thing that makes you cherish things.
And no one
my gosh, I have
understands
so many feelings
except
about
for
it.
this other
Nobody.
person. Ugh. And she's losing her mind, and he's losing his soul, and it's just
it's I think about it every day of my life. It's truly haunting. And the thing is this is one of those okay, my sort of enduring theory about romance novels.
You guys, we're starting
I'll keep it
another
short,
hour.
I promise.
Oh
my gosh. Oh my gosh. I have to stop. I just have
Okay,
no. My thing is just that
enduring theory about romance novels.
Is
I
that
would like to hear. Yeah.
love of another person begets love for a broader world, right? That's the thing that I find really charming and interesting. And I think the Kleypas novels are a great illustration of this. Love of this person is the thing that connects them to being with people and in community again. Hence the Marxism of it all. But that's the moment where you see all the adjacent intimacies that aren't the central couple or throuple or whatever it is, are some of the places where you see that in action, where Lothair's love of his, why am I forgetting her name? Ellie is her name?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
His love of Ellie, it's not the first time he's ever experienced that, but this adjacent intimacy he has with Nyx is it's the seeds of something where they become more open with each other too, because he is more open with Ellie. So he's just better. He's just better in all directions.
Right? Being in love makes you better. And that's it. If being in love doesn't make you better, then you're in the wrong romance novel, right? Then you're in something else. I don't know what that is. Literary fiction, I guess.
Go away. We don't care.
But that's it. I feel that's the thing you have to believe. Being in this relationship and being with this person, these friends I have, they're making me better. And I think that's why romance is so great. It's about really believing that, really trusting yourself to love. It's going to make you better, the best version of yourself you can be.
That's Derek Craven and those spectacles.
Oh, God damn.
Stop. We didn't even talk about the spectacles.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
I know.
One year, what we have to do for Derek Craven Day is talismans.
Yeah.
Every book and its talisman.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
I think you guys
does.
I think you guys had made that point in that very first Derek Craven, and it was one of those things where I couldn't unsee it. Every Kleypas I read
now
after,
you're
I was
oh
what's
my God.
the talisman?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really good.
She's so good. Sanj, tell everyone where they can find more of your brilliance.
Thank you. That's so generous and kind. But at Baskin Sons on TikTok and on Twitter sparingly these days because that app is really rough. Instagram, which I'm bad at but enjoy, and Threads, I guess, which is worse than Twitter. So Baskin Sons everywhere.
But mostly TikTok.
But mostly TikTok. Yes. Yeah.
Well, this was really fun. Will you come another time and talk about someone else?
Oh my gosh, happily, easily.
We'll have a Lothair anniversary episode, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll plan for 4 hours of recording time. Don't worry.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're going to have a lot to discuss. Yeah.
Amazing. So everyone, you can go to show notes at fatedmates.net and see Sanj's terrific chart, which we will have the most updated version of for you. We are Fated Mates. I'm Sarah McLean. I'm here with my friend Jen Prokop. We are, you can find us again at fatedmates.net or on Twitter at fatedmates or on Instagram at fatedmatespod. And if you really enjoy just this kind of deep dive conversation, you can join us on Patreon at patreon.com/fatedmates, where you get access to our Discord, where there are 800 or so people
talking about this all the time
to do this. In fact, today there are Zachary Bronson. Team Zachary Bronson always gets loud in the comments on Derek Craven Day, and that's where they are there right now. Happy Derek Craven Day. Go talk about romance novels with people. because they're great. Thanks for joining us, Sanj.
Thanks for having me.